Hello, everybody. Welcome to Towns of 505, or welcome back for the lowly viewer. My name's Nick, and joining me again today on a Saturday is Bryer from Bryer's Music Showcase. Today we'll be reviewing Black Sabbath's 12th studio album, Seventh Star. Uh, you have anything you got to say before we start beginning?
All right. So, of course, Seven Star. I've mentioned it many times leading up to this, but we are officially in the no man's land when it comes to at least the general public's knowledge of Black Sabbath. Because, this is when, of course, okay, going back a little bit, but of course, we did Born Again, and of course, they were starting to get somewhere with Ian Gillan, but of course, Ian Gillan got the call to rejoin Deep Purple, and of course, they did the Perfect Strangers album, and so Ian kind of like, okay, I'm off to do that now, and so now it's just once again, it's just Tony and Geezer kind of like, okay, where do we go now? And so they actually decided maybe they should take a break for a little bit and actually start doing some solo stuff. Um, and Tony decided to do a solo album. He actually got a whole band together. I think the original intention was to have each song have a different singer, but lo and behold, he ended up getting just one singer, and that singer is Glenn Hughes. And Glenn Hughes was pretty notable at that point because he was in a band called Trapeze originally, but then in 1974 he was also another vocalist for Deep Purple, and he was one of the co-vocalists along with David Coverdale that replaced Ian Gillan. So it's funny, we went from one Deep Purple singer and now we're going to another Deep Purple singer. So it's kind of interesting how those two bands have those connections with. But anyhow, Glenn did the album, and the thing about it is that of course Geezer's not on. So in terms of who else is in this band that Tony made, so you have Dave Spitz on bass. He played bass on all the tracks except for one song on here. Then you have Eric Singer on drums, who would later in the '90s join Kiss. And then for the first time ever, we have Jeff Nichols, who has been playing keyboards on a lot of these '80s albums. He's now an official member of this band.
Not related to Billy Nichols.
Yeah, no, totally different person. But yeah, they recorded the album. They had a good time doing it, and Tony turned it into to the record label. And again, his intention was to make this a solo album. But then the execs looked at him and was like, Tony, this is good, but I think it would sell better as a Black Sabbath album. And so, despite Tony's gripes, he ended up agreeing with it. And so, as a compromise, hence why it's credited to Black Sabbath, but then on the bottom it says featuring Tony Iommi.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it goes. So, long story short, this is really supposed to be Tony's first solo album, but lo and behold, it got turned into a Black Sabbath album. And I read that when Glenn found out that he's now the new singer for Black Sabbath, he's like, oh no, because he thought it was only going to be a one and done thing. But he decided to go with it. And I'll go a little bit ahead. We'll go talk about the tour for a little bit. The thing about Glenn, when they toured the album, he only lasted 5 shows, and they had a ton of dates. And the reason why he only lasted 5 shows is because it was pretty well known at the time that Glenn Hughes had a massive cocaine addiction. And so that really affected his voice. And another thing that really messed him up was that the thing about Glenn Hughes, he's actually a bass player. He plays bass a lot. And so, of course, when he's fronting Black Sabbath, he doesn't have a bass. So now he's like up there, has no idea what to do with his hands. And so after 5 shows and after a very bad, I think he hurt his throat on his last show. And so once that happened, they're like, okay, Glenn, you can go on now. And so that was kind of the end of that whole Glenn Hughes era of the band. But then again, Glenn would eventually get clean, and he's actually doing pretty good today and sounds a lot better than he's ever been, surprisingly. but that's pretty much the background info in terms of this album. And this is definitely one I'm definitely very curious and where where this conversation is going to go, because this is another one of those albums that is very polarizing. I've seen many people say this is one of, if not the worst Black Sabbath album. Um, I mean, Born Again was polarizing, but I feel like this one gets a lot more hate than Born Again. At least Born Again has a fan base, a very devoted fan base. You don't really see much for this album, but I'm going to say up front, I've always enjoyed this album when I first heard it. I mean, I haven't heard this album for that long, but I think I've had this for like this CD for like a half a year, I think, and I've always enjoyed it. It's different. It doesn't have a lot of those like trademark Black Sabbath sound, but it still sounds good. I mean, still have Tony, and his guitar playing is still fantastic here. And yeah, I'll go more in depth when we go through each track, but I've always enjoyed this album.
Yeah, this is another amazing album by them. Another album where I strongly disagree with the masses. I love this album. Um, I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it because I heard it way back, and I'm like, I'm not sure. This and Born Again, I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it again, but yeah,
I was kind of the same. I wasn't sure if you were gonna like this sound for them.
I think this album's also great. You know, yeah, another great album for them. Um, yeah. First song on the album, "In for the Kill."
All right, In for the Kill. I mean, right off the bat, you have a nice, cool drum intro by Eric Singer, and yeah, it's just a very good heavy rock song. It's got a really good riff. I mean, has a good guitar solo. And Glenn, I mean, I haven't heard that much of Glenn Hughes. I only know his work in Deep Purple. I haven't heard his work in Trapeze. I don't know his solo stuff, and he's done a lot of other stuff. But aside from this album and Deep Purple, I don't know a whole lot of Glenn Hughes. But I mean, he sounds great on here. I mean, definitely has a, like, I can't really pinpoint, but he definitely has a very, not quite theatrical, but he doesn't have a very powerful voice, like a very more on the higher end. And I really think he sounds good on here. And it definitely has a somewhat more commercial sound to it. It's more polished than past Black Sabbath albums, but I've always digged that sound. Like, a lot of 80s metal sounded like this, and I always liked the sound of it. And so I think this was a really good opening track to kick it off.
I agree. Great opening track. Sets off the mood really well. Yeah, this is another solid Sabbath song. I don't get the hate for it. Next song on the album, "No Stranger to Love."
All right, No Stranger to Love. We get a ballad here, and you know what I'm gonna say. I'm a sucker for ballads. And yeah, it is very much of their attempt at an 80s ballad, and I like it because of it. I've seen some Black Sabbath fans, of course, shit on it because, of course, most metal fans aren't into ballads, but I've always liked the sound of it. It has a nice keyboard intro by Jeff Nichols. And again, Glenn really does really great on these like slower tracks. I think he's there you go. There it is. That's trademark, by the way. Anyhow, you're fine. You're fine. I'll let it slide. But like I said, Glenn really does a great job on these ballads. I think he has a good voice for it, and the chorus is very nice. Yeah, it just has a lot of those trademark ballad tropes that I like. So it's gonna rank pretty high for me. But I will say though, this is actually, I forgot to mention this, but this was around the time they started to make music videos, because this was MTV at the time, and the music video is terrible. Because you have, it's obvious that the band aren't meant for MTV, but they're kind of put in it. Like, there's a part where I guess Tony is in an argument with this woman, and this woman just pushes him, and Tony's like, well, I guess I'm sad now. And so he just kind of strolls off awkwardly. And you see Glenn Hughes in the video, and again, like I said, he had a cocaine addiction, so he kind of put on a lot of weight. He had this very rugged beard, and he had his mullet, and he kind of he did not look good. But it's kind of funny. It's one of those videos. It's kind of bad. It's kind of funny. But other than that, yeah, I think it's a good song.
I love this song.
Oh wow,
It's
cool.
an amazing ballad. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this song is better than the first song. I'm like,
Mm.
this song is amazing. You might be surprised that I say that. I really enjoy
Yeah.
this song. Yeah, why does this song get hate or something?
I mean, yeah, again, it's most metalheads, like a generic metal fan hate ballads.
I mean, Ozzy Osbourne made they made that Changes song off of Volume 4, and that seemed
Yeah,
a little more well received.
yeah, it was well received, but again, I do hear some people say they don't like Changes. So
That's in both cases that's fair, but to me it's surprising because man,
mm,
this is a great song.
mm,
I'm just gonna say it. I don't look for Sabbath for a particular sound. I'm just looking for Sabbath for good music, and
mm-hmm,
so far they're producing good music, and I don't care if they go a different direction or not. As long as they make music that's good to my ears, get a thumbs up for me.
mm. That's good.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, oh, they have to go through these tropes, and I'm like,
Yeah, and I think another reason people kind of ignored this album at first was because I think this was the first single, and of course,
oh,
and of course,
that's
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, that's kind of I think that's partly why it didn't really represent the album.
Okay, that was like, this song is really good. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
fair enough. All I gotta say, it's one of my favorite songs on this album as well. I'm just gonna,
Mm.
yeah, I know you're gonna be happy about that because I knew this was gonna be one of your favorites too. Next song on the album, "Turn to Stone."
All right, yeah. This is one I didn't have right to have a whole lot to say about it, but still, I think it's another really good song. And again, you have another good drum intro, um, and then gets this really good melodic riff. And I mean, that's something I'll say about this album. Like, I mean, yeah, it's not like doomy, it's not dark or anything, but it's like just good old fashioned melodic metal. And again, I love that sound, and I think Tony does a really good job here. The whole band really pull it off. Again, another great Glenn vocal here. It's just another really good song. Yeah, this was another highlight for me.
I agree. This is another amazing song on the album. 3 for 3. They're they're impressing me. Like this album is probably their most like. I'm not saying it's one of their best albums, but it impresses me how there's so many changes they can still make great music.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it just to me it just shows how great they are. Next song on the album, it's just a little interlude, Sphinx.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interlude. Another keyboard thing. Again, just to bring us into the next song. So I mean, by default, it's in last place, but it's okay. It's fine in terms of context. It kind of makes sense, but yeah, it's not something you're gonna listen to on its own.
Yeah, it's good, but like yeah, it's not like something that you're gonna be like, yeah, I gotta go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's on the album.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing offensive that like makes you go like, oh, like why is this like
Yeah.
it's no sound effects. Let's just take that sound
Right.
effects.
Yeah.
Sound effects is the epitome of like, why is this?
Why? Yeah.
And that's in the good period of Black Sabbath, the good period. So I don't know. It just I don't know. It's still good though. It's not like the Sphinx. Side one closes out with the Seventh Star title track.
Yep. Got the title track, and yeah. Once again, another great song here. I mean, that got really good heavy drum sound here. I mean, it's 80s sounding as heck, but does it work. I enjoy it still. Once again, you have another really good guitar riff here. The tone of it is nice, and just the feel of it. Like it definitely has a very heavy tone to it. Um, I can't really describe the mood, but it's kind of one of the songs you just kind of headbang to, and it's just like very catchy. And I think the chorus is very memorable too, like how Glenn kind of how he pronounces Seven Star. I think it's another really good headbanger here.
Yeah, this is another great song on the album. Again, they're just pumping out these great songs. It's I'd say I'd say almost I mean almost all the songs on this first side are in my top five. That's
Yeah.
how good side one is. Besides one particular track, which should be obvious, all five of these track like the four like main tracks are like in my top five. It's like you really start off your first side really strong. Uh, Side two opens up with Danger Zone, and it's not a different song from Top Gun. It's a different song. It's Danger Zone.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, this is another highlight for me. Again, the riff is just so good here, and again, some really good drumming from Eric once again. And I like how the keyboard is kind of playing along to the guitar almost. You can kind of hear it if you listen close enough, but I think it just adds another dimension to it. Um, it's definitely the probably not. I wouldn't say this is like heavy metal. Definitely more on the hard rock side of things, um, but yeah, once again, it's just another really great song here, and I think the guitar solo here is awesome as well. Like I said, it's another highlight for me.
This is one of my favorite songs on the album. This
Mm.
is again they're just continuing the flow of just awesome songs. Um, yeah, I don't really have too much to say, but yeah, this is another great song. I'm like, they're like keep on chugling with these great songs.
Yep.
Little reference to the series that I'm doing with Jacob on his channel. Uh,
Hmm.
next song on the album, "Heart Like a Wheel."
Heart Like a Wheel. So we get to the longest song on the album, and it's probably the most definitely the bluesiest song on here. Like it definitely has a more blues arrangement to it. Um, and I will say though, I mean if we exclude Sphinx, like comparing all the songs, this would be towards the bottom for me. But again, like I said, well, I didn't say it, but I will say I still think it's still a very solid song. Um, the only thing that holds it back is that it is pretty long and it doesn't really change a whole lot. It kind of just stays in that's sort of cadence the whole time. So that kind of draws it back for me. But again, there's still some great stuff about it. Again, the guitar itself is very good, and again, I think Glenn sounds great here. I mean, throughout this whole album, he does a great job on the vocals. And the guitar solo is pretty cool too. But yeah, comparatively to all the other songs, this is probably one of my least favorites on the album. But still, I think it's a very good song.
I agree. This is the weakest song on the album. Um, of all the songs on this album, this is this is normally Jason's trademark catchphrase, but yeah, this is a little too
Mm-hmm.
bluesy for Sabbath. Uh,
Mm,
to me, Sabbath isn't really best known for. I know I said this before that I shouldn't be looking for Sabbath for certain things, but yeah, blues isn't really their best suit. It's not bad, but it's not a track that I'm going to go back to that much.
yeah.
Next song on the album, "Angry Heart."
All right, now we get somewhere again. The riff is pretty simple, but I think it's pretty effective too. And one thing that really surprised me was the sound of the organ, because the organ definitely has a very Deep Purple sound to it. I don't know if it's because Glenn was in Deep Purple, so I don't know if they're referencing that, but I think I like to picture that was the case. Um, I mean, it's another one. It's another one of those songs that doesn't change a whole lot, but I think it's a bit more effective than the last one. The chorus itself is really good. It's very memorable as well. and and yeah, it's just another great song. Um, Again, it was kind of towards the middle of the road, but still, I think it's pretty good. And of course, the song kind of blends into the final track, which we'll get into shortly. But overall, I think it's still pretty good.
I like this song. Um, Again, it's not to me, in my opinion, it's not on par with the songs like the first five songs, like the
Yeah,
first like
no.
regular songs.
Hmm.
But it's still a good song. It's not gonna dangerously affect the album that much, but yeah, I think this is a pretty good song. Last song on the album, like you said, it goes into "In Memory."
Hmm. So this one definitely has a story behind it. I've read that really this came about because I believe around the time they were making this album, Tony's father passed away, and so it was kind of on his mind, and so hence why it's called "In Memory." And I think it's another pretty good song on here. It's probably I think, granted it's kind of closing this album on a kind of depressing note, but um, it's funny. But again, I kind of like that. I always kind of dug sad songs, I guess, for some reason. But here you can hear the acoustic guitar kind of take center stage mainly, and and I think it sounds nice. But then you have the electric comes in and adding more of that emotion into it. Um, and Glenn's vocals on here, like just especially towards the end where he's just wailing, it still haunts me. Like I could feel it. I can feel the emotion that he's portraying. Like I think he did a great job interpreting the lyrics to this one. I don't know who specifically wrote the lyrics. I don't know if Tony wrote them himself or he had some help. But um, whoever wrote it, I mean, Glenn did a good job at interpreting it, and definitely leaves this album on somewhat of a haunting note. But I think it's a very solid closing song.
I agree. This is a really good way to end off the album. Um, Again, not one of my favorites. It probably barely just missed out on the top five, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is still a really good song, though. I agree. Good meaning behind it. Very very depressing though to end off the album, which it works really.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this is the last album we're gonna be hearing from Hughes. So
Yeah, last one.
yeah, we get like four albums with Tony Martin.
Yeah,
We got like one Dio album in between though, so it's gonna be interesting.
yeah, it's gonna be weird. Yeah, but
Um, what is your top five?
all right. So top five for me. Number five, I have Turn to Stone. Number four, Danger Zone. Number three, surprisingly not higher, No Stranger to Love. And number two, In for the Kill. And number one, it's going to be Seventh Star.
We're gonna share the same top five. Number
Oh,
five,
wow. Okay.
In for the Kill. Number four, Seventh Star. Well, we're sharing it, but like not really.
It's just, yeah, different order, but yeah.
Number three, we this is interesting. Number three, No Stranger to Love.
Mm,
Number two, Turn to Stone, and my favorite song on the album, Danger Zone.
nice. Very cool.
Love that song. Love all five of
Mhm.
these songs.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
what would you rate this album out of 1 through 10?
Okay. All right. Again, this is another one that's kind of a bit hard to rank because it's kind of hard to compare it with the stuff that came before it. But once again, I think it's a very I think you said as well. I think this is another one of their underrated albums. I feel like it's not as is definitely not as bad as people say it is.
No,
Um,
not at all.
yeah, again, if you like this sort of '80s slash hard rock and metal sound, then you're definitely going to enjoy this album. The and so I think I'm gonna give it. Is it like in my top 10 Black Sabbath albums? Maybe not, but again, still very good. So I'm going to give this an 8.5 right now. And again, it comes down to again the production sounds good, Glenn's vocals really carry it, and Tony's guitar work still very good. And again, the rest of the band, I think they do a good job here. And so yeah, 8.5 as of right now.
I want to give this album a higher score than I wanted to give it at first, but there is one song I'm not as into as the
Mm-hmm.
rest, and I will say side 2 does lose traction. Besides one particular song, besides Danger Zone, I say side 2 isn't as strong as side 1.
Okay, yeah.
Let me give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
It's probably my least favorite of the 9 out of 10s. As of now, my bottom. As of now, my ranking would be Paranoid at the bottom spot, Sabotage, 7th star, then the rest. So it's like towards the bottom right now, but I'd say this is still a really strong album.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. We only get it for one album. It's crazy. Next album though we'll be reviewing is the Eternal Idol, which is the first of 4 albums we get with Tony Martin.
Yeah, 1, 2. Let me double check. 1, 2, 3. Actually, 5. Yeah, 5 with Tony Martin.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez, that's a lot. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoy this. I know it's funny. Me and Bryer are recording live just as Jason and Scott are recording live. Weird coincidence, not on purpose. I would never do that on purpose. Just happened to be my hockey team was playing around this time, and they happened to do live around the time. Like, ugh. But thank you guys for watching this video. I saw one view like throughout the video, but then they left. Whoever watched this, thank you for watching. See you guys in the next one. So long.